Welcome, Boker Tov, Erev Tov. If you're looking at this in the evening, we'll start, of course, with the bracha Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Kitshanu B'Mitzvotav V'Tzivanu La'asok B'Divrei Torah.
Amen.
And I can tell you that I discovered something this morning in preparing the lesson today. Something that I never realized after all these years. It was one of those kind of moments.
Aha moment.
It was an aha moment. So we'll see what it is for you. All right. So here we are on the on verse 27 of chapter 1, and it says bara oto. Let's take a look again at that verse. So here we go. It's a very beautiful, beautiful verse and something to think about. So here it is. Vayivra Elohim, God created et ha'adam betzamo, the man in his image. Betzelem Elohim bara oto, right? He created him in the image of God. Zachar unkeva, male and female, he created them, right? Notice it's still Adam, and it's also male and female. So, bara oto. So here it says bara oto, and then it says bara otam. So Rav Yehuda Rami. So this is a technical phrase that we find in the Gemara. Rami means to throw against or cast against, and it refers to finding two verses that appear to contradict each other. That's the Rami. Kativ B'Tselem Elohim bara oto. It says, in the image of God, he created him. Ukativ Zachar unekeva bara otam. And in that same verse, it says, male and female, he created them. Ha ketzad. How is this possible? How do you harmonize what appears to be a contradiction? Batchila Allah b'machshava livro shnayim. To begin with, God had considered creating two. And the Torah Temimah is going to explain that and clarify that. Ulevasof nivra echad. But in the end, he created one. Now, okay, I feel this still begs a question, but let's do what we need to do. And this is in Tractate Ketuvot, page 8a. Ritzono lomar. So what is he trying to say? Betchila, initially, Allah b'machshava, it occurred, it was his intention, livro shnei gufim, to create two distinct bodies, meyuchladim, distinct. Ulevasof, but in the end, nivra guf echad, he created one body, umimenu bara et haisha, and from that one body, he created the woman. Please excuse me. 1 second, I'm gonna just clear my throat. So just to refresh your memories, there are two versions as to what exactly happened. There is a version, of course, that says that God formed the rib, that took one of Adam's ribs and formed it into the woman. And I think there's some lovely, perhaps literary suggestions of what that relationship is, what a perfect relationship is between a husband and a wife. Okay, and that's one thought. The other interpretation is that original man that God created, that original Adam, was actually androgynous, meaning both male and female, and that when God created woman, what he did was he split that androgynous being, and because they had their backs to each other, they were attached by their backs, and he brought Eve around to meet Adam. So that original creation, the original Adam, was both male and female. So just a little more detail about that. But Iyain Brachot, and if you look up Brachot, the Tractate Brachot, page 61a, or Eruvin, the Tractate Eruvin, page 18b, השינוי נוסחאות בעניין זה. There's some different texts, they're different versions of the same basic idea. ויובא לקמן hey bet. Okay. I think what he's saying is we're going to look at those different versions in chapter 5, verse 2. I think that's what he's talking about, Genesis chapter 5, verse 2. Uva Gemara kan, but in the Gemara that he's referring to, and that's here, right? This is Ketuvot, page 8a, right? That's in the Gemara kan. Mevu'ar nafkamina. There is halachic implication. There's sometimes it's called a practical difference, and it's saying that there's a different implication, and we'll see what a nafkamina is. Something that we learn that has a practical application. Bidrashazo, in this particular interpretation, le'inyan birkat chatanim, with regards to the blessings that are said under the wedding canopy, the brachas that are recited. There are blessings during, basically you may know them as the Sheva Brachot, the 7 benedictions that are said as part of the Jewish marriage ceremony. Te'im nizol batar machshava, that if we follow the machshava, right, the initial intention of God, that shetiena shtei yitzirot, that there should be 2 forms, tzarich levarech bebrachat chatanim, right? We would have to bless in the blessing, in the marriage blessings, levad, right? Bikat asher yatzar et ha'adam betzamo, the bracha that goes, who formed man in his image, od bracha yotzer ha'adam, another blessing, yotzer ha'adam. We'd need to make 2 separate blessings, right? Remez the Yitzirat Chava, that would be an allusion to the creation of Eve. Al Shem HaKatuv, and how do we do this? Why is it Yotzer Adam? Why isn't it Yotzer Chava, something like that, or Yotzer Haisha? And it's an allusion to the verse Hey Bet in chapter 5, verse 2, Zachar unkeva bar am, that male and female he created them, Vayikra et shmam Adam, and he called their name Adam. So we see that Adam refers both to Zachar, both to male, unkeva, and to female. V'chein kaimalam, and in fact, that is what we practice. So when I was looking at this to begin with, I was a little puzzled as to what exactly was he referring to. And I realized that I needed to go and do some research in terms of looking at the Birkat Chatanim and the wedding blessings. And in fact, this is what I came up with. So let me show you. And I'm trusting now that this is going to come up with what I found on the web. And here it is. I trust that you can see it. And if we look at this, look at blessing number 3. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam yotzer ha'adam. Right, there it is. There's the bracha, who formed man. And look at this. And now we have the 4th blessing. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, O Lord, our God, sovereign of the universe. And here's the Asher Yatzar et Adam Betzamo. That's the blessing he was mentioning, who formed man in his image. B'tzelem demut tavnito, in the image of his shape, as it were, or the image of his shape. V'hitkin lo mimenu binyan adayad, and established for him a binyan, a building forever. And this has to do with the ability to procreate. Gave him the ability to procreate, and look at how this ends. Baruch atah Hashem Yotzer Ha'adam. So strange. Again, the same blessing. So we repeat Yotzer Ha'adam twice. Look at that, or repeat it once. Right? That we repeat the blessing. And that's exactly what he's talking about. That's the practical, and now we're talking here practicalities. So because we're saying that initially God had in mind to create 2 separate entities, right? we now have a reference both to Adam and to Eve, and as was the initial intention or the thought to begin with. Of course, the question that it begs that I mentioned, I'm going to go back to the original share that I had, is why? Why did, that's now for us to ponder what was the intention. And I'm just, as I try to think about this question, whether God felt that there was a possibility then of there being a more harmonious relationship if there was a realization that in that relationship between a man and a woman, or between a husband and a wife, and there was a realization how they were actually one entity, to look at their marriage as truly a marriage, and that hurting, if one hurt the other, they were actually hurting both. And for us to deeply understand that was going to be part of the relationship and the nature of that relationship. And again, it's just in general the awareness of how we are one family. So let's see. Well, maybe we're not going to, we're going to see. Okay, let's see. Okay. I have a confession to make that I have not had a chance to prepare this particular section here at this point. And so I am going to have to, I think I'm going to have to end the lesson early, possibly, or you'll have to tell me. I'm going to stop the share for a sec. And do you want me to try and continue? I have this on recording. Do you want me to try and wing this as best as I can? I will. I just did not have a chance to prepare this. I'm not getting any response.
Well, I would like you to go ahead.
All right, very good. Okay, not hearing objections, I will do the best I can, to my embarrassment. Okay. So we're going to look at this. You're going to see the process in which I try to do that preparation. So, Zachar, right, male. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Ami, said Rabbi Isaac, right, in the name of Rabbi Ami, Kevan Sheba Zachar Ba'olam, since a male came, or once masculinity, or something like that, a male came Ba'olam, the world came into the world, Ba Shalom La'olam. Interesting, right? Shalom, peace, if we want to translate it as that, to the world. So he takes the word Zachar, right? Zekar. He takes the word Zachar and he translates it as Zekar, right? That this, so Uchativ, and in Isaiah chapter 16, it says, Shalchu Kar Moshel Aretz. So we're going to need to look up this verse in Isaiah, right? In chapter 16 to see what it says. So what I am going to do now, since this is here, and I do have, let me see if I can do this. One moment. I'm going to try something here. Let's see something here. Okay, I'm going to stop the share for a moment. And I'm going to go to something else here. Let's see if I have it open. Hopefully I do. Here it is. Okay. And find the place for him. Let's take a look at what it has to say. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to share the screen again and take a look. This is a Sharfstein translation of Torah Temimah, of at least the parts that we're reading right now, and you can see it, right? And this is the translation, right? Something here. male, right? Rabbi Yitzchak said in the name of Rabbi Ami, when a male comes to the world, peace comes to the world. Zachar, male, acronymically Zekar. This is a lamb of peace. So we just learned something, that the lamb represents peace, as it is written in Isaiah 16, that's chapter 16, verse 1, send the lamb as an offering of peace to the ruler of the land. So there we are. Now we understand what exactly it's saying here. I'm going to now go back to this, okay, and give me a moment for a new share. Let's see if I can do this. Okay. See, hope you do. See if I can get back to my, I don't know that I can. It doesn't seem to be working. Are you able to see the new share?
We are able to see the share, the Torah Temimah.
Yes.
Yeah, we
In the
can see
Hebrew.
it.
In the Hebrew.
Yep.
Very good. Okay. All right. So let's take a look here. So the point, and I'm going to type this in because the word kar, meaning lamb, is not a word that I am so familiar with. Okay. So I'm going to get that in here. Okay. Watching. Oops. Sorry. There we are. Put that in there and put in lamb. You're seeing the bones and the yes, the stuff around my preparation, right? Okay. So let's find it here. Here we are. Kar pirusho mincha. So it's interesting. He says that this word kar, see, Torah Temimah is having a conversation with me, his student, and he knows probably that I'm having trouble translating this word kar, kafresh, and he says its explanation is a gift, vahusiman shalom. And gifts, look at this, are an indication, they're an illusion or a sign of peace. Sending someone a gift is essentially a peaceful act, an act that is holding our peace. And now I'm understanding better the gift of the Magi, for example, I mean, cross-cultural reference there. And of course, the gift of the Magi is actually a reference back to the gifts of the princes when the tabernacle was originally dedicated. We have the gifts of the 12 princes, which, by the way, is also the Torah reading for Hanukkah, because it talks about the dedication Chanukat HaMishkan, and it has that word Hanukkah, and that's the passage in Numbers that talks about the 12, each of the 12 princes, the heads of the tribes, on their own day, bringing these gifts as a sign. And now I am understanding better the idea of gifts representing peace. B'dasha no karikon hu. This kind of drasha, this kind of interpretation is called a notarikon. We've had this word before, and what it means is it's from the word notary, right, in English, the notary, which has to do with shorthand. In other words, this zachar is seen as a shorthand of zekar. Ve'yein ma shekatavti lekaman, or shekatavti lekaman pashat lech, and see, and you can check out what I wrote in the parsha of Lech Lecha, right there. That is in Genesis chapter 17, verse 5. Me'inyan drashot notarikon bichlal, that I made there in that chapter in Lech Lecha later on. He's saying, Torah Temimah is saying, that I discuss there in general this whole notion of this seeing words as shorthand in this way, and they're called, of course, notarikons. The inyan hadavar shahazachar ruach shalom bo, And this whole matter that the male, right, has to do with a spirit of peace. Yesh lahaspir, we can explain al pi ma amar, okay, besugin, right? I think that's what this is. The mem dalits is, okay, and we can explain this in by means of what is mentioned. I believe sugin is has to do with sugyot. I'm going to understand that word, meaning Talmudic discussions. So the Talmud is set up in such a way that the subdivisions are called sugyot, and it has to do with the discussion of a particular topic, and where that topic is dealt with in quite a great deal of depth, and to a point where you can either it's left with saying that it's not resolvable, or it is actually resolved. So this is what it says: Ish makabel piyus, that a male, right, a man accepts piyus, meaning an attempt to reconcile. It's easier to apologize to a man. He's willing to accept an apology. The ein ha'isha mekabelet piyus, and there it says that for a woman it's more difficult, right? She is not so ready to accept an apology, simply apology, and to be reconciled. What he's saying is this: she doesn't have as much of a tendency to accept apologies as a man. And I guess, you are welcome, of course, to comment on this, whether or not there's some truth to this, or whether you feel it's just being unfair to women or unfair to men. It's up to you. Okay,
I
Shani,
mean,
go
I
on.
see it as fair, but I think there are reasons for it.
No
I
one's
mean,
arguing over that. No one is
uh,
arguing that.
because people
Yes,
want change behavior and they want to be on the same page. They want some kind of sense of understanding,
yes,
you know,
right.
and apologies can be very empty without some of that. And, and with repeated behaviors, whereas, men maybe have other things that they want and they're saying, yeah, I'll accept your apology. Let's, go make out or whatever. I'm just being euphemistic, but you know,
I hear you. I
I think it's
agree.
called makeup sex, but I mean,
Yeah,
so
yes.
I know that that can sound like a trivial way to look at an apology if you're just being serious about this is you're just talking about real true apologies. But if you're making that delineation between genders, I think that there may be some practical reasons.
I
If
would.
it's just true apologies, I don't think there's a grain of truth in it.
Okay, so I would not argue with you for one second that there may well even be certain psychological reasons in the particular social structure at that particular time, in terms of taking advantage of women, or how people perceive themselves, and whether there is, one is making generalities, and whenever one is making generalities, there's always dangers. But I don't think the comment here isn't trying to say that there might not well be very legitimate reasons for this gender distinction. It's not arguing that, or trying to say that a woman isn't somehow less worthy or something like that. It's not saying that. It's just saying that there's something in the psychology of a man as opposed to the psychology of a woman. That's what it's saying, rightly or wrongly. Okay. Ukeshenit payes adam, and when a person, here he's just saying, and when a person is reconciled, right, when he or she accepts an apology, mar'eh bazeh derech leshalom, clearly the willingness to accept apologies is a way of trying to create peace, a way to peace. Ki teva hapiyus monea roges, because it is in the nature of reconciliation to avoid anger, right? It puts away anger. V'lachen mikevan sheba zachar ba'olam. And for this reason, since the maleness had come into, or the masculinity came into the world, ba'al imo midat hashalom. Along with that came this quality of peace. Shedarcho v'tivor b'chach, because this is his manner and his nature in this, kemevuar, as was just explained. So before I go on, there's just no question about it. Who are the people, though, who actually engage in war and battles more than anyone else, right? Who actually physically engage. And it has been the men of this world.
And aggressive sports and
Yeah,
everything,
right, exactly. So,
aggressive relationships.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the whole thing from the beginning about men being, a gift of peace to the world, to me, none of that rings true.
Well, I wasn't expecting it to, but okay, fair enough. I think here it's not referring, it's just saying, is there a willingness? Is it easier to appease a man than it is a woman? In general, not in every
Present
case.
company accepted.
That's of course. Okay. I'm just trying to be transparent. I'm giving you this stuff. We know that this is not the first time, right? That in my sharing this with you, and with whoever wants to look at this, I'm doing the best I can to be transparent and not necessarily to rationalize, and to understand that there are parts of Torah that are more difficult or perhaps problematic than others. We know this, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't look at all the good stuff that's in it as well. It's a mixed bag, and we have to try and use our own sense of our own intelligence and our own hearts in order to see what we can do with it. It is back to that statement in Pirkei Avot that says there are 4 types of students, right? A sponge absorbs everything, the funnel in one end and out the other, the sifter that sifts out the fine grain from the bran, and the let's see, the strainer that just retains the dregs. Okay, well, if it's saying they're dregs, so maybe this is dregs. I don't know. I think there may be a grain of truth in all of this. So
But
we have to figure it out.
is it possible to say that there are certain, maybe small parts that are wrong? And if it is
Yeah.
possible to say, what do we do with that information?
Okay, so you know that my general approach is to try and find a way to legitimately, and I'm underscoring legitimately, interpret that information in a way where the one understanding of it may be helpful in some sense or other. Okay, and we know that one of those ways, for example, is to turn this on ourselves. Okay, and to look into ourselves. So I'll give you an example. Amalek, blot out Amalek. All right. On the one hand, on the surface, it looks like genocide. On the other hand, if we say that when it's talking about Amalek, it's actually talking metaphorically. And it's saying that with that, and because Amalek attacks the weakest side, that's the pshat, right? It attacked from the rear and the weak. It's saying it within all of us, there are weak points inside ourselves. And if we allow there's certain things within us that represent qualities that are not good qualities, that are destructive qualities, and very often they will influence us from our weakest side. And that is to blot out Amalek means that we have to try to be rigorous about looking into ourselves truthfully and seeing when Amalek, quote, quote, is attacking us. So that's taking something that on the surface, on the pshat level, is talking about genocide, which I have major problems with, okay, under all circumstances, and actually turning it into something that is quite, I think, quite profound. And on a practical level is something that the world would be a better place if everybody was looking into themselves and looking at the Amalek inside themselves and trying to get rid of it.
Yeah, and the world would be a better place if everybody were peace oriented, but maybe these things are more prophecy than history or current reality.
Or maybe it's a reflection of the fact that in treating women a certain way, don't expect them to accept your apology so quickly. That there needs to be the kind of
Yeah,
relationship.
I'm just talking about the part about
Yeah.
men being peaceful and gift of peace and that stuff.
I-
And Adam can mean humanity, but humanity is not generally, bringing peace to the world
So and again, I know that in our
yet.
culture, we tend, because there were negative elements to making a distinction between men and women, we don't want to do that anymore. And I don't think that's fair either. And I realize I could be very sharply criticized given the fact that it's countercultural, but that there are, in fact, that there exists masculinity and femininity in the world is actually something beautiful and is something marvelous. And that in some ways goes back to the Adam and Eve being individuals as opposed to actually being one, and then being able to see that. So I think being able to make distinctions, but to be fair and about those distinctions, and not to use them to try and take advantage or control or whatever, I think is a good thing. So I realize that what I'm saying isn't necessarily going to be popular, to say the least. Okay. Let me see if we can get to the end of this particular comment, since we are out of time. Okay. Let's see. Okay. וגם יש לפרש על פי מה שכתוב בבראשית רבה, and one can also explain based on what is written in Bereshit Rabbah. I believe this is Perek, chapter Peitet. That would be chapter 89. V'sha'a shehashanim yafot. Okay, at the time, I think this is saying when the years are lovely, habriot ne'asin achin elu la'elu, that the creatures are brothers one to another, ve'ahava ve'achava ba'olam, and there is love and friendship in the world, yensha. Ve'kevan shehazachar mevi kikaro, right? And because the male is the one, I think, kikar would mean a loaf of bread, right? But here, in other words, when it's saying you make your bread, it's the same expression. In other words, dahainu parnasato. In other words, of course, back in those days, right, the man was the breadwinner. That's what was going on back then for a long, long time. The man was the breadwinner. And since the man is the breadwinner, la'olam, and brings the parnasah, the livelihood, into the world, mevi shalom la'olam. In that case, he is able to bring shalom into the world. Well, I know for a fact that one of the reasons that the French Revolution took place was that there was widespread famine in Europe at the time, a very severe famine. And that's what essentially underscored the French Revolution. I think what is being said here, and I really love the direction that Torah Temimah went with regards to the male as opposed to, it wasn't as opposed to the female, except in the sense that back then, the woman was the one who took care of the raising the children, taking care of the domestic areas of the house back then, that the man had to make sure that it was there, that there was sufficient livelihood. In other words, he was the breadwinner, and that, in that sense, understanding this drush. So with that, we will finish today. I hope this was helpful, and we'll continue the next time, possibly tomorrow. Excuse me, I'm going to do this. That's fine. Sorry, I'm letting you watch me do my homework here. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Actually, we're down here into this one, and I'm going to stop the share. And thank you. I hope again you enjoyed. I'm going to stop the recording.